Hey guys, tonight we begin with something a little darker. A world lit only by fire, where the sun isn't just your timekeeper, it's your survival line. A world where women are born into a system that doesn't just limit them, it defines them from cradle to grave. You might imagine fairy tale princesses and brave knights, but trust me, if you were born a girl in medieval Europe, you might not make it out alive. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're born in a cottage with a dirt floor, smoke curling from the hearth, and a mother whose hands are rough from years of scrubbing, stitching, and surviving. There's no doctor in sight. The midwife has seen this a dozen times this month. No painkillers, no sterile tools, just prayers, herbs, and maybe a bit of stale ale if someone remembered to brew it right. The air smells like damp straw and sweat, and the sound of livestock outside never really goes away. It's not just any birth, it's your birth. You're a girl, and that means from the moment your lungs fill with smoke-thick air, your chances of surviving, really surviving, take a hit. Your father was probably hoping for a boy. Carry the name. Boys plow the field, boys go to war. Girls do what they're told, if they live long enough. By the way, don't get too attached to your crib. Odds are, it's not yours alone. You'll share it with a sibling or three, maybe a cousin, maybe even fleas. There are a lot of those. The mattress is stuffed with straw, which would be fine if it wasn't also stuffed with bugs. Your blanket? A rough woolen sheet that weighs about as much as a small goat and hasn't seen water since the last time someone dropped it in a stream by accident. From day one, everything about your life is tied to survival. Your mother knows the numbers. 1 in 3 babies won't make it past their 5th birthday. And if you catch something, a fever, a cough, even a scrape gone wrong, there's no penicillin, no ambulance, and certainly no stay home from school and rest plan. There's just hope and work. Always work. No one takes photos of your first steps. There are no baby books. When you can walk, you're old enough to start helping. You don't get toys, you get chores. Water to fetch, bread to knead, siblings to rock, chickens to chase back into the coop because they've wandered off again and dinner doesn't catch itself. You might think, well, at least you have a community, family, connection. And you do. In the same way a flea has a community living on a dog. You're not alone. You're just very, very crowded. Everyone shares the same room, the same bed, the same cold. Privacy doesn't exist. If you cry, someone tells you to hush before you wake the baby. If you're sick, you better get better fast because no one can afford to stop working, not even you. But here's the part they don't paint in medieval tapestries. Even if you survive your early years, there's no real childhood. That's a modern invention. Back then, you're not a child. You're a small adult with stubby fingers and a growing spine, expected to mimic your mother in every way. Watch her, learn from her, be her. And what about fun? Sure, there's laughter, there are stories told by firelight, but there are also lice and frostbite and neighbors dying from things we now cure with a pill. No one asks what you want to be when you grow up. They already know. You'll grow up to be your mother, if you're lucky. But don't worry, you won't be a kid for long. Puberty hits early, especially when you're underfed and overworked. And the moment your body changes, people start looking at you differently. Like you're no longer a girl, you're potential, a future bride, a womb waiting for a name to carry. And whether you're 10 or 13, that shift comes fast and hard. So you lie there on your bug-stuffed mattress, the fire flickering low, and you wonder, is this it? Is this all there is? Yes and no. Because next we'll step into the world of medieval girlhood, where schooling is scarce, obedience is a virtue, and growing up means letting go of dreams you didn't even get time to dream. Your days blend together, not because they're boring, but because they're nearly identical. Dawn breaks not with a gentle chirping of birds, but with a clanging church bell, a far-off rooster, and the groan of a body that's already tired from yesterday. You rise, not because you want to, but because you must. And if you're a girl, the day doesn't belong to you. It belongs to everyone else. As a small girl, your job is to learn, but not in a classroom. There's no neat row of desks, no blackboard, and definitely no recess. Your school is the hearth. Your teachers are your mother, grandmother, and maybe an older sister if she hasn't already been married off or buried. You watch them spin wool, scrub floors, gut fish, and change swaddling on babies that aren't even theirs. And you copy them. That's how it works. You learn by doing, by failing, by being corrected. Not with patience, but with a sharp look or a muttered prayer that you'll turn out better than your Aunt Hilda, who ran off with a tanner and was never seen again. Formal education? That's a laugh. Maybe your brother gets to walk to the parish school once a week to learn Latin phrases he'll forget by adulthood. But you stay home. If you're from a peasant family, books are expensive and girls aren't expected to read anyway. Letters are tools for monks and merchants, not for wives and mothers. Even noble girls, the lucky ones in stone halls instead of mud huts, are only taught enough to be ornamental. Penmanship for love letters, a psalm or two to prove piety. Reading is not a priority, and writing, that's just showing off. What is prioritized, though, is obedience. It's your first language, even if it's never spoken. You must be quiet. You must be modest. You must not interrupt, question, or be too curious. That's how girls are trained. Not with rules, but with stories, parables, and saints' tales where the good girl suffers nobly and the bad girl gets eaten by wolves, or worse, lives in shame. And shame, by the way, is always waiting. It's in how you sit, how you speak, how you dress. Stand up too straight and you're vain. Speak too much and you're disrespectful. Laugh too loud and someone whispers that you're wild. There's no right way to be, only less wrong. The church is everywhere, not just in the building with the bell tower, but in your home, your thoughts, your chores. Biblical womanhood is the blueprint for your life. Eve sinned. Mary obeyed. You know which one you're supposed to emulate. Every Sunday, the priest reminds you. And every day in between, so does your mother. Your body isn't yours. It belongs to God, your family, and one day, your husband. You're reminded of this in tiny, constant ways. The way your hair must be covered. The way your skirts must fall. The way your laughter must never be heard outside the house. You're not a person. You're a role, an expectation wrapped in linen and duty. Still, there are moments, fleeting, almost invisible ones, when you're alone, maybe in the garden or sneaking a crust of bread behind the shed, when you let yourself wonder, what if? What if I could run? What if I didn't marry? What if I learned to write, not just my name, but a story? But then someone calls your name and the moment is gone. Because what ifs don't put soup on the fire. They don't mend tears in tunics or rock crying babies back to sleep. What ifs are a luxury, and you can't afford them. So you return to your chores. You stir, scrub, stitch. You memorize the faces of saints on the faded wall tapestry, their eyes always watching, always judging. You remind yourself that this is the path, that everyone walks it, that to question is to sin. And when you see your older sister, Mari, marry a man twice her age with hands like bricks and breath that smells like spoiled ale, you don't cry. You don't even flinch. You just help braid her hair and tie the back of her dress, and you wonder, how many days until it's your turn? Because girlhood in medieval Europe isn't a phase. It's a holding pattern. A quiet, obedient wait until someone comes along and decides your next role. And when that day comes, you won't be asked. You'll be told. You're not yet 13, but the world has already decided what comes next. Childhood. What little there was of it is ending. Your body starts to change, and with it, so does the way people look at you. The baker's wife stops calling you little mouse and starts calling you young woman. The village priest reminds you to pray harder for modesty. Your mother watches you more closely, not out of love, but out of vigilance. You don't quite understand why, but the air around you thickens. Whispers follow you when you pass the well. Eyes linger longer, and you feel it like a second skin. Expectation. Your name isn't being called to help in the kitchen anymore. It's being discussed in hushed tones by your father and a neighboring landowner. Marriage. That's the next chapter. Not yours to write, just yours to endure. Legally, the age is 12. And while most peasant girls don't marry that young, the moment your hips begin to widen and you no longer look like a child, the clock starts ticking. Time to think about alliances, dowries, suitors. Not because you're ready, but because the village says you are. You listen through the door one night and hear the word Anselm. He's a cobbler's son, broad-shouldered, mostly quiet, and smells vaguely of wet leather. Not terrible, not thrilling, But that doesn't matter. This is the part of your life where agency takes a long holiday. You don't choose your husband. He's chosen for you, like a tool or a wagon. Marriage is an agreement, a transaction. Your father trades your future for a cow, a bit of land, or some relief from debt, and you become someone else's property. You won't meet him privately. You'll see him once or twice with your mother present. Maybe he'll nod, maybe he'll grunt. But he won't ask what you think of the arrangement, because what you think doesn't matter. In noble circles, it's no better. Actually, it's often worse. If you were born Alina of Durham, a 15-year-old noble girl with fine manners and an expensive dress you never got to pick, you'd already be packing for your new household. Your father might have just secured a political tie with a family across the sea. You'll be married to a man twice your age whose beard has more gray than your village's cat has fleas. And the wedding? It's not a fairy tale. It's not lace and love songs. For peasants, it's barely a ceremony. Just a few words, a priest if you're lucky, and a nod from your father. Maybe some bread and ale shared with neighbors. Maybe. If you're noble, it's a bigger show. But still not yours. The focus is on alliances, dowries, and the merging of families. You are the ribbon tying the deal together. The goal? Produce an heir. Preferably male. Quickly. Elena doesn't get a honeymoon. She gets instructions, how to run a household, how to keep servants in line, how to smile when guests arrive, how to keep quiet when her husband comes to her bed. She is, in every way, a child walking into a world built for someone else. And back in your own world, the village begins to shift its gaze. You're no longer that sweet little girl. You're Anselm's future wife. Your chores change. You're taught how to knead dough properly, how to mix herbal remedies, how to hold a baby without dropping it. Because soon, the baby will be yours. You lie in bed at night, listening to the sounds of chickens rustling, someone snoring in the corner, and your own heartbeat thumping against a future you didn't choose. You wonder if marriage means anything different from now. More work, maybe. Less time, less freedom. But was there ever freedom to begin with? In the dark, you imagine what it would be like to say no. Just once. To run, to disappear into the woods, to live alone, weaving baskets, eating berries, never marrying. But those are tales for bards and madwomen, not for you. So you press your fingers into the straw mattress and let the thought pass, because tomorrow they'll begin sewing your wedding shift. The wedding shift is rough linen, plain and practical. There's no silk, no lace, no white. That's not how it works here. White dresses belong to a future no one's imagined yet, one with cameras and bouquets. Your gown is simple because the event is simple. You're not celebrating love, you're finalizing a contract. The morning of your wedding, your mother braids your hair with trembling fingers. She doesn't say much, no one does. There's no speech, no hugs, no follow your heart nonsense. Just tension, like a pot about to boil over. You're not walked down an aisle. You're walked across a yard, maybe to the church if your village has one, or just to the front of your future home where Anselm waits, shifting awkwardly and scratching at his collar. The priest mutters prayers. Latin fills the air like smoke, and you don't catch much of it, but the tone is clear. Be faithful, be fertile, be quiet, is placed in his. A nod here, a mumbled vow there. It's done. You're married. You move into his house that night, or more likely his family's house. There's no honeymoon. There's no just us phase. His mother greets you with a once-over. His father barely looks up from sharpening a blade. There's a corner of the hut where a mattress has been cleared for you both. Privacy, please. Everyone hears everything. And the wedding night? Let's just say it's not about romance. It's about duty. Producing heirs. And while no one says it outright, the pressure is louder than words. There's an unspoken countdown. Everyone expects news of a pregnancy soon. If not, people start whispering about curses, about barrenness, about whether you're doing your wifely role properly. You're still 15. Meanwhile, across the channel, Isabeau of Bavaria is also a bride. She's married to King Charles VI of France. She's 15 too. Her groom? 31. He's a king. She's a pawn. Her marriage isn't just a contract. It's a treaty, a diplomatic maneuver between powerful houses. No one asks if she's ready. Readiness isn't required. She is crowned queen, draped in jewels that feel more like shackles than gifts. And what's expected of her? An heir. A boy. Immediately. She is watched, guarded, whispered about by courtiers. Every missed period becomes a matter of national security. Her body is a battlefield for legacy. Back in your world, the pressures are quieter, but no less suffocating. Your mother-in-law asks every day if your courses have stopped. Women at the well drop hints about fertility herbs. The baker's wife offers unsolicited advice involving garlic, goose fat, and, God help you, a chant. You just nod, smile, try to breathe. Anselm is not cruel, but he's not gentle either. He's just a man who was told he'd get a wife and now has one. He doesn't ask what you want. Why would he? This isn't a partnership. It's a role assignment. Your days are full. You wake before the sun. Fetch water, grind grain, feed chickens, mend tunics, scrub floors. If you're lucky, you get to sit down once, maybe twice. But even then, there's spinning to do. Always spinning. Wool doesn't twist itself into thread, and you're not about to embarrass your new family by falling behind. At night, your hands cramp, your back throbs, and your mind drifts. You don't sleep, not deeply. There's always a baby crying somewhere, a pig rooting too close to the walls, or Anselm climbing into bed without a word. You're a wife now. Rest is a rumor. Autonomy is a joke. Some nights, you remember the stories your grandmother told by firelight about girls who ran into the forest and became witches, women who spoke with animals, brewed potions, lived alone. Dangerous stories, but beautiful ones. You wonder if they ever existed, and even if they did, what happened to them? Weeks pass, then months. Seasons shift, and so does your body. You miss your course, once, twice. The whispers stop, replaced by nods and congratulations muttered like prayers. Your mother-in-law starts knitting. Your husband starts smiling more. You start to disappear. Pregnancy is not a glow. It is nausea in the mornings and aching in your hips by night. It is back-breaking chores with a belly that's heavier by the hour. There's no prenatal yoga, no vitamins, no regular checkups. Just superstition, old wives' remedies, and God's will. You're 16 maybe, but you feel 80. If you're lucky, the midwife knows what she's doing. She's delivered dozens, maybe hundreds of babies, some alive, some not. She brings with her a satchel full of herbs, a flask of strong ale, and hands that don't shake. But luck is rare. The day comes suddenly, and the pain is all-consuming. You scream. No one tells you to be quiet anymore. Not today. They just pray louder. Your body feels like it's splitting in half, and in a way it is. The baby comes at dawn. It's a girl. You barely see her before someone takes her to wash in cold water and wrap in scratchy cloth. You lie there, empty, hollow, exhausted beyond comprehension. Blood pools under you. You're still bleeding. You don't ask for help. You don't dare. You're told it's normal, that the weakness will pass, that the dizziness is just the aftershock. But you can feel it. Something's wrong. Still, you wait and pray. Maybe you recover, maybe you don't. Some women fade away within days. Infection, fever, hemorrhage, words that don't exist in your vocabulary but exist deeply in your reality. But no one blames the system. No one blames the lack of care or knowledge or tools. If you die, it's God's will. If you live, you go right back to work. The baby cries. She needs you. And your husband? He just hopes the next one's a boy. If you were noble, the pressure is even greater. In the halls of castles and courts, birthing is a spectator sport. Ladies in waiting hover. Physicians, barely better than barbers, offer advice based on astrology and bile. If the child is male, there is celebration. If not, disappointment disguised as politeness. Isabeau of Bavaria, remember her? She bore 12 children. Not all lived. Few did. And everyone was a political investment. Her womb was more scrutinized than her husband's decisions. When Charles began to suffer from mental illness, Isabeau was left to govern, but still her value was tied to reproduction. For you it's quieter, but no less brutal. You've become a mother, and you're still just a teenager. Your own needs vanish. You nurse the child with breasts sore and cracked. You rock her until your arms go numb. You try not to fall asleep standing up, and then you do it all again. Because motherhood isn't a phase, it's a loop. An endless rotation of feeding, cleaning, calming, surviving. Some days you forget what your own name sounds like. You're just his wife or her mother. You're not a person. You're a function. Still, there are moments when the baby wraps her tiny fingers around yours, when she smiles without teeth, when she sleeps against your chest and the world feels, just for a second, still. You live for those, because in a life full of noise, those are the quiet victories. But you know it won't last. Another pregnancy waits just around the corner. The second pregnancy comes before your body has even finished healing from the first. There's no discussion, no planning, just missed courses, tightening clothes, and the same cycle starting all over again. If you hesitated before, you don't now. There's no room for hesitation in a world where birth control doesn't exist and rest is considered weakness. Your body is a tool, reused, overused, and never quite maintained. You don't have the luxury of saying, "not tonight." That phrase doesn't live in your vocabulary, nor does space between children or family planning. These are concepts for another century. You carry on, because what else can you do? The baby needs feeding, the house needs cleaning, your husband needs dinner, your in-laws need tending, and you, well, you need more hours in a day, more strength in your arms, more silence in your head. You get none of it. By the time you're 20, you've lived 5 lives and buried at least 1 child. Infant mortality is high. Some babies don't cry at birth, others cry once and never again. You grieve, but quickly. There's no time for long mourning. There are other mouths to feed. Your days are relentless. Before dawn, you're up, kindling the fire, milking the goat, preparing porridge thick enough to glue itself to the inside of the pot. Your hands are cracked, your feet blistered, your back aches like you've been hauling stones, because in a way you have. The workload never shrinks. Children grow, yes, but so do their needs. Your older daughter now helps with the washing, the mending, the herding. She's 7, which means she's ready to start becoming useful. You glance at her sometimes and feel a strange tangle of pride and sadness, because you know her future and it looks exactly like yours. Men work, yes. They till fields, mend roofs, barter livestock, but women's work is endless and invisible. You maintain life, quietly, constantly, and without thanks. Meals appear, socks get darned, babies get bathed, all because you make it happen. And if you don't, then it doesn't. There's no backup, no shift change, no call in sick. Illness just means your chores take longer and your suffering goes unnoticed. Maybe you wrap your head in a damp cloth and keep going. Maybe you faint in the field and someone throws water on you. But you always get back up. And while this is your life as a peasant, don't think noble women have it easier. Their work is different, but not lesser. They're tasked with appearances, lineage, alliances. A noble woman must maintain grace while navigating a minefield of etiquette and gossip. One wrong look, one misplaced word, and she's branded difficult, hysterical, or worse, rebellious. Their homes are grander, their clothes finer, but their cages are gilded, not unlocked. And no matter your rank, your purpose is the same. Be a wife, bear children, serve men, remain small. Some women resist, but quietly, cleverly. You hear whispers about one named Maris, a midwife who knows the properties of every plant in the forest. She delivers babies, heals fevers, and sometimes, when no one's looking, prepares teas that make miracles happen. Some say she's a saint, others say she's a witch. Both labels are dangerous, but necessary, because in a world where laws weren't written for you, survival often comes from knowing the rules and knowing how to bend them. You find yourself watching, learning. You listen to Maris when she speaks low, you gather mint when she asks, you crush seeds between stones just the way she showed you. Not because you want power, but because you need it. One day, this knowledge might save your daughter, or your sister, or you. And when the fire is low and the children are finally asleep, you sit for a moment. Just a moment. The only one you'll get all day. And in that moment, you realize something. You're not weak. You're surviving every single day. In medieval Europe, survival is your constant task, but obedience is your daily homework. You don't just live, you perform. Every action, every word, every breath must pass through a filter of what will people think? Because a single misstep isn't just a mistake, it's a threat to your reputation, your family's honor, and sometimes even your life. There are rules. So many rules. They aren't written on parchment or nailed to church doors. They're passed down in whispers, in warnings, in the look your mother gives you when your skirt rides too high up your shin. You must be modest, always. That means no uncovered hair after puberty, no laughing too loudly, no eye contact with strangers. If you walk alone, people talk. If you speak your mind, they judge. If you argue, they wonder who taught you to be so ungrateful. Your role is clear. Be humble, be silent, be unseen unless someone needs you. The church reinforces this. Every Sunday, the priest stands at the pulpit and recites the stories that hold you in place. Eve, the first sinner. Mary, the perfect woman. You are told, often loudly, that these are your two choices: temptation or obedience. There is no third option. You hear about saints who lived in purity, who suffered in silence, who died with smiles on their faces. You're expected to emulate them. But you notice something. None of them had children to feed, or socks to darn, or husbands who snore like oxen. Still, you try. Morality isn't just about your behavior, it's about perception. If someone thinks you've misbehaved, that alone can destroy you. A rumor spreads like wildfire. A sideways glance becomes gossip, and soon people start to avoid you, or worse, accuse you. Sometimes it starts innocently. You're caught speaking to a man at the well, just asking about grain prices, but someone sees, someone assumes, and suddenly your name is no longer safe in people's mouths. Or maybe you help Maris the midwife one too many times. People start saying you know too much about herbs, too much about how to stop a pregnancy before it starts. They start calling you clever, and not as a compliment. They start calling you other things too. You become careful, paranoid. Every smile is calculated, every step rehearsed. Your world shrinks. Even in noble households, women walk this tightrope. A lady of the manor must be charming, gracious, and endlessly patient, but not too charming, or she's seducing. Not too opinionated, or she's dangerous. It's like trying to balance on a blade without cutting yourself, and everyone's watching, hoping you fall. The punishment for stepping out of line varies. Maybe you're shamed publicly, forced to confess your sins in front of the village. Maybe you're beaten. Maybe your husband refuses to let you leave the house. Or maybe they just stop trusting you with anything. And trust in this world is currency. Lose it, and you lose everything. So you adapt. You fold yourself smaller. You speak in apologies. You nod when you want to shout. You laugh politely when your stomach churns. You survive through submission, not because you believe in it, but because resistance is a luxury for people with power. Some women break under it. Others learn to bend with the wind. And some, like you, start to wonder if there's another way. Not rebellion, not witchcraft, just something in between. A quiet, clever path where you keep your head down but your eyes open. Because even in a world where morality is a weapon, you've learned how to dodge. And some nights when the stars are out and the air is still, you imagine a place where you don't have to. But until then, you survive. By now, you've noticed something important. It doesn't matter how hard you work, how well you behave, or how devoutly you pray, your place in society stays the same. No matter how good you are, you're still someone's daughter, someone's wife, someone's mother. Never just someone. And in medieval Europe, there are no loopholes. Even noble women, dressed in embroidered gowns, sipping watered wine from silver cups, know the boundaries of their invisible cages. Their homes might be grand, their duties cushioned with servants and silk, but their fate is the same as yours, to be governed, managed, used. For the peasant girl, the expectations are crushing but clear. Obey, work, produce, serve. But for noble women, it's all that, plus appearances. They must shine, even as they're held down, smiling through alliances, silken hostage to the politics of land, legacy, and bloodlines. Lady Iseldra of Thornbridge, for example, just 30 years old, knows how to pour wine just so, how to curtsy without creasing her gown, how to flatter men with half-sincere words. She plays the game, because not playing isn't an option. Her life is an endless dinner party of manipulation. Every guest a potential threat, every compliment a veiled warning. She must know who to trust, no one, when to speak, rarely, and when to stay silent, always. Behind every glance is strategy, behind every word, risk. Her marriage wasn't a love story, it was a chess move. And she's not even the queen, just a pawn dressed like one. Her husband holds the title, but she manages the estate. Quietly, of course. Through whispers and smiles and careful ledgers. She signs nothing, she commands no soldiers. But without her, the manor would collapse. She's educated, yes, but only because someone decided she should be. She can read Latin, quote the Psalms, write elegant letters, and yet, the moment she raises a concern about a tax collector or suggests the harvest may come up short, someone chuckles and reminds her, leave politics to the men. So she nods, smiles, and later that night, she redoes the books in secret. If you're thinking that sounds exhausting, you're right. It is. Mental labor wrapped in silk, emotional juggling behind lace veils, and no room to fall apart. Noble women can't scream, can't cry in public, can't show weakness. Because weakness in a woman isn't met with sympathy, it's met with dismissal, or worse, suspicion. Back in your world, the emotional labor looks different, but it's no less heavy. You wake up before anyone else to pack food for the men heading to the fields. You comfort the crying toddler while tending the fire. You smile when your husband jokes, even though your back hurts and your mind is already listing tomorrow's chores. You're not allowed to have a bad day. You're not allowed to snap or sulk or sit too long doing nothing. If you do, people notice, people talk. She's lazy, she's moody, she must not be well. But when men sulk or rage or drink themselves to sleep, it's just a hard season. You keep the house running anyway. There is no day off. You dream sometimes of running water, of warm bread you didn't have to bake, of quiet, just silence. Not a cry or a bell or a voice asking where their shirt is, but dreams are like feathers in a windstorm. You hold on to them as long as you can, then watch them go, and yet, through it all, you endure. So does Lady Iseldra. She survives in a world that's too polite to be cruel, but cruel nonetheless. She dances, curtsies, writes careful letters, keeps dangerous secrets. She's smart, but only when it's safe to be. And you're strong, but only when no one's looking. Because strength in this world isn't measured in swords or crowns. It's measured in silence, in survival, in the invisible weight you carry every single day and the quiet, defiant choice to carry it again tomorrow. If noble women fight battles in drawing rooms, peasants fight theirs in fields and kitchens. But some fight quietly from the pulpit, behind thick walls, wrapped in habits instead of aprons. Not every woman marries, not every woman becomes a mother. Some take a different path, not freer, but different. Enter Anwen. Born the daughter of a poor woodcutter, she was the third of 7. Too many mouths, not enough bread. At 10, she was sent to a convent, not out of devotion, but out of desperation. One less child to feed, one more soul committed to God. At first, it's a relief. The convent is quiet, clean compared to the farm. There's order, meals at regular times, a roof that doesn't leak, a bed without siblings kicking her in their sleep. Anwen learns Latin prayers, how to mix ink, how to read, not just scripture, but poetry. She learns silence. She learns stillness. She learns that obedience in a habit is no different than obedience in a wedding dress. But the rules here are cloaked in holiness. The abbess rules like a queen. Punishment comes with a prayer. Questions are met with psalms. And while no man will claim Anwen as wife, the church now owns her soul. She becomes a novice, then a sister. Eventually, through attrition, wisdom, and quiet maneuvering, she becomes abbess, the head of her order. In a rare twist, she holds real power, at least within the walls of her convent. Outside, she's still a woman, still watched, still questioned. But inside, she manages land, oversees finances, settles disputes, guides younger nuns like a mother, guiding daughters she'll never birth. But power, even cloistered, comes with risk. Anwen must answer to bishops, men who see the convent as both holy ground and political pawn. She must navigate church politics while protecting her sisters. She must be firm, but not too harsh, wise, but not threatening, a saint, but not a martyr. She walks this tightrope daily. Every sermon, every decision, every interaction a test. Back in your village, the idea of being a nun might sound like freedom. No husband, no children, no endless pregnancies. But the convent is not a refuge, it's a different kind of cage, one with incense instead of ash, psalters instead of soup pots, but a cage nonetheless. Still, you're fascinated. Anwen visits your village once, overseeing the sale of surplus herbs grown in the convent garden. You see her, tall, serene, eyes like polished stone. People bow, even the men. You wonder what it feels like to walk into a room and command attention without raising your voice. She notices you, says nothing, just offers a single nod as if to say, I see you. It's nothing and everything, because for 1 second you feel like more than a wife, more than a mother, more than a servant in your own life. You feel noticed, recognized. It sticks with you. You ask Maris later what she knows about Anwen. The midwife smirks and mutters something about smart girls and quiet power. And then she adds, but don't get too dreamy, child. Cloisters don't fix hunger or loneliness. She's right. Of course she is. But sometimes just knowing there's another way, somewhere, somehow, is enough to keep you going. You tuck that knowledge away like a hidden coin. You may never spend it, but it's yours. And in a world where women own almost nothing, that's everything. You wake before the sun, again. Your joints protest, your eyes sting, and the chill in the air wraps around you like a cruel joke. Another day begins, and the rhythm hasn't changed. You've lost count of how many years it's been, since your wedding, since your first child, since you last did something for the joy of it. Your daughters are older now. The eldest, Hildra, is nearly the age you were when you married. She's bright, quick-witted, and asks too many questions. Dangerous traits. You want to protect her from the world and from herself. You want to keep her wildness tucked away safe, but you also know you can't. The world will press her into shape just like it did you. She watches you closely, mimics your walk, your gestures, even your size. One day, she helps carry water and says, "Mama, will I have babies like you?" You look at her small hands, her round face, and you lie. Not if you don't want to, because hope, even false, is better than silence. Your younger children trail behind, wide-eyed and sticky-fingered, always hungry. There's never enough bread, never enough firewood, never enough time, but there's always enough noise. The cottage hums with the sound of survival. Anselm is older now too, slower. He's not unkind, but he's weary, like a door that's been opened too many times. He still works the field, still eats in silence, still expects his tunic mended and his supper warm. You've been together for over a decade, and yet you barely speak beyond necessity. Marriage here is endurance, not affection. You wonder sometimes what life would have been like if you hadn't married. If you'd run, if you'd gone to the convent, if you'd vanished into the woods like the women in whispered legends, but then someone cries or coughs or knocks at the door and the thought slips away like steam from the kettle. Your daily routine never changes. Mornings are for work, afternoons for more work, nights for collapsing into bed, listening to rats scratch under the floorboards. On good days, there's soup. On bad days, just stale bread and whatever didn't rot in the cellar. The seasons blur together. Winter is cruel. Spring is muddy. Summer, too hot. Autumn, frantic. You barely notice holidays except as days when the priest speaks longer and the chores get postponed by half a morning. But amid the exhaustion, something unexpected happens. Hildra starts asking real questions about the stars, about why women cover their hair, about why God lets babies die. You panic, not because you don't know the answers, but because you do, and you know how dangerous they can be. You try to guide her gently. Some things are better not asked aloud, you say. She frowns. But don't you ever wonder? You do. But you stopped saying so years ago. That night, you sit by the hearth after everyone has fallen asleep. You hold your mending in your lap, but you're not stitching. You're just staring into the fire, watching the embers pulse like a slow, dying heartbeat. You think about your mother, long gone. You wonder if she ever sat like this, staring at flames, imagining her daughter's life. Did she hope for more? Did she know this was all there'd be? And then, you think about Hildra and her questions and her future. You can't change the world, but maybe, just maybe, you can sharpen her mind like a hidden blade. Teach her to hide her thoughts behind smiles, to nod while thinking, to speak carefully, but carry knowledge like a second spine. Because maybe she won't escape, but maybe she'll survive better than you did. Maybe that's enough. Autumn comes with a vengeance. The harvest is late, the crops are thin, and the air tastes like cold ash and fear. You can feel it in your bones. The season of hunger is near. Every creaking branch, every hollow wind seems to whisper the same word: less. Less grain, less warmth, less time. The entire village tightens its belt. Bread gets thinner, soup gets waterier. Everyone pretends it's normal, that this is just how it goes. But you've lived through lean years before, and you know what's coming. And you're afraid. You count everything now. Not just coins, but crumbs. You know how many days a sack of barley will last, how many logs you need for a week, how long the baby can go before you have to dilute the milk again. Your children don't complain. They're used to it, which somehow makes it worse. Hunger doesn't scare them like it did you at their age. They've never known anything else. At night, your husband talks about joining a merchant caravan to earn extra coin. You nod. It might help, or he might vanish like others have. You don't argue. If he leaves, you'll manage. You always do. In the meantime, you work harder. You gather roots, you dry herbs. You barter with the woman down the lane who has too many turnips and not enough kindling. You make deals with quiet desperation. But there's another kind of hunger in the village, one that's harder to feed. The hunger for answers. for reasons, for someone to blame. And when food is scarce, people look for witches. It starts with whispers. Someone's cow gives sour milk. A baby catches fever. Bread rises strangely. People want explanations, not scientific ones. Those don't exist here. They want a name. Someone points at Maris, the midwife. She's too knowledgeable, too independent. She lives alone. She knows things others don't. That makes her suspicious. You feel the shift. The space around her gets colder. People avoid her eyes. Some stop speaking to her altogether. You see it, and you know what it means. You've seen it before. You remember a girl from another village. Anna, maybe? Or Alva? She was clever with herbs too. Helped a neighbor's child with a cough. Then one day someone's horse died, and Anna was gone by morning. No one said the word witch, but no one looked for her either. Now the same shadows fall on Maris. You want to help. But you have children. You have a name to protect. You have just enough to lose that the fear keeps you quiet. Still, you find ways. You drop off dried apples. You speak to her at the well, loudly, kindly, so others see. You remind people subtly of the babies she's delivered, the lives she's saved. You hope it's enough. But survival makes people cruel, and you're not sure kindness wins anymore. At home, Hildra asks, "Is Maris a bad woman?" You shake your head. "She's just a woman people are afraid of." "Why?" You hesitate. "Because she knows more than they do." Hildra frowns. That answer doesn't satisfy her, and you're both afraid of what that means. You tuck her into bed with an extra blanket and whisper prayers you no longer believe in, and when you lie down yourself, you don't sleep. You listen to the wind, to the silence, to the sound of a village slipping further into fear, because you know the truth. Sometimes hunger makes people desperate, and desperate people burn what they don't understand. Winter doesn't arrive. It descends, sudden, sharp, and unapologetically cruel. One day the sky is gray, and the next it's dropping snow like a punishment from heaven. There's no gentle prelude, no polite frost warning, just cold, biting, brutal cold that finds every crack in the walls and presses against your ribs like a silent threat. You're prepared, but only in theory. The pantry's not full. The roof leaks in 3 places. The firewood pile is optimistic at best. And Anselm's still gone, last seen with a caravan headed west. You tell the children he'll return before the solstice. You don't tell them you're guessing. The first week, everyone pretends they're fine. The village laughs through chattering teeth and says things like, "Harder winters have come before." But then the bread shrinks, the soup thins, and suddenly everyone stops talking. You learn how to make do with almost nothing. You mash dried turnips into paste. You mix water into ale to stretch it. You chew slowly, not to savor, but to trick your stomach into thinking it's full. The baby cries more often. Your eldest doesn't cry at all, which scares you more. Clothes become patchwork. Blankets become currency. You barter 3 eggs for a holy coat, which you line with straw to keep the cold out. It doesn't work, but it's better than nothing, and every morning you pray. Not for warmth, not for food, just for one more day where everyone wakes up. Then the fear changes. The cold is one thing, it's cruel but predictable. But people are different when they're hungry. You see it in their eyes. Suspicion, desperation, and soon the whispers begin. The cow gave sour milk. Bread turned green. A baby won't stop crying. They blame Maris. She's old, she lives alone, she talks to plants, she knows things. She's everything this village fears when the world stops making sense. The word witch is never said out loud. It doesn't have to be. It's written in glances and half-finished sentences. At first, Maris ignores it. She's survived decades of superstition. But then someone breaks her window. Then her herb jars are smashed. Then one morning, the door to her hut is wide open, her belongings scattered and her fire dead cold. She doesn't flee. She doesn't cry. She stands in the square as the priest mumbles something about cleansing the village. She's tied at the wrists, paraded in front of people she's helped, healed, fed. No one looks her in the eye, except you. Just for a second. Her gaze doesn't accuse, it doesn't plead, it just knows. She sees you, all of you. The fear, the shame, the silence. You want to shout, to scream, to do something, but your legs are frozen, not from the snow, but from the weight of survival. You have 4 mouths to feed, you have no husband, you have a name to protect, so you say nothing. That night, Hildra slips away. You wake to the sound of the door creaking open, snow blowing in. Panic hits before your boots. You find her in the ruins of Maris's hut, her small hands fumbling through the broken shelves. "What are you doing?" You whisper. She doesn't turn around. She shouldn't be forgotten. You want to scold her, but you kneel instead. Together, you gather what's left: crushed roots, dried stems, a few bottles that didn't shatter. You don't speak, you just move, gently, reverently, like mourners, because that's what you are. The next day, the village pretends nothing happened. The well is silent. No one says her name, no one asks where she went. Even the priest avoids the topic. But that night, you light a single candle and place it near the herbs. You whisper, "Maris," and hope the wind carries it somewhere kind. And when Hildra asks what you're doing, you say, "Remembering," because memory is the only grave women like her get. And when everything else is lost, faith, warmth, even justice, memory is the thing you can still pass on, quietly, carefully, but defiantly. The thaw comes in small whispers. Not a dramatic flourish, just a quiet shift. The icicles shrink, the snow turns to slush, and the cold becomes damp rather than sharp. Mud replaces frost, green pokes through brown, the wind stops biting and starts brushing like an apology whispered too late. Spring doesn't feel like a triumph. It feels like an aftermath. You survive the winter, but not without cost. You're thinner. So are the children. Your boots have holes. Your hands are cracked. The house feels like it aged 5 years and 5 months. And Anselm, he finally returns. He appears at the edge of the road like a ghost in human clothes, thinner, paler, with a stitched scar along his jaw. He carries a bag that looks heavier than he does. Inside, a few coins, a chipped bowl, and salted fish wrapped in cloth. No grand stories. No "I missed you." Just a nod, a heavy silence, and a shared understanding that this, whatever this is, will continue. You don't ask where he's been. He doesn't ask what happened here. You both have too many answers and no energy to share them. Life resumes. Sort of. The village limps back to rhythm. Fields need turning. Roofs need patching. You begin sewing again for neighbors. Patches, hems, the occasional mended boot. It's not much coin, but it's yours. And that makes it feel heavier in your palm. You keep moving. You always do. But something inside you doesn't. Something stays back in that frozen winter. With Maris. With the silence. With the moment you realize that doing nothing still costs something. So when Hildra asks questions now, you don't shush her. She asks, "Why did no one stop them?" You say, "Because they were afraid." She asks, "Were you afraid?" And you pause, then nod, "Yes." And she doesn't judge you. She just understands. She's older now, taller, sharper. She watches people the way you do. She's learned to read not just faces, but pauses between words. And she's starting to speak less like a child and more like someone who's seen too much too young. One day, she asks if she can help with your sewing. You smile. "Only if you don't mind pricking your fingers." "I'd rather prick fabric than people," she says, dead serious. You want to laugh, but you just nod. Because she's not wrong. The world hasn't changed, but something inside your home has. There's a new rhythm, not joyful, not easy, but more balanced. Anselm speaks more, only a little, but enough. He asks about the children. He fixes the broken stool without being told. It's not love, not quite, but it might be respect or the closest thing to it you'll get here. And in the evenings after the children sleep, you sit by the hearth, not always stitching, sometimes just breathing, thinking, remembering. You think of Maris, of Anwen the Abbess, of Lady Iseldra in her manor of masks, of all the women who existed without monuments, who fought wars without swords, who bled into straw mattresses and whispered wisdom into their daughters' ears. You're one of them now. You light a candle for Maris again. This time, Hildra helps. She arranges the herbs. She speaks the name aloud. Maris. Not a curse, not a secret, a legacy. You pass her a dried sprig of yarrow. "Do you remember what this one does?" Hildra nods. "For fevers and stopping bleeding." You kiss her forehead. "Good. Because knowledge is inheritance. And you refuse to let yours die in the cold. There's a strange kind of quiet in summer that you never noticed before. Not silence exactly. The world is still full of flies buzzing, children yelling, the occasional clang of a blacksmith hammer, but you're quiet. The one that settles in your chest when you're not bracing for the next disaster. You still work. The grindstone doesn't stop. Laundry, cooking, mending, sweeping, those never vanish. But for the first time, the work doesn't feel like drowning. It's heavy, yes, but bearable. You breathe between tasks. You laugh once or twice, and it surprises everyone, including yourself. Even Anselm notices. He watches you one evening, brushing the youngest hair, and says, "You seem lighter. You look at him, not sure if it's an insult or a miracle. Maybe the world's just stopped sitting on my shoulders. He nods, as if that makes sense. Maybe it does. Hildra is 12 now, the same age you were when talk of marriage first started. But things feel different. Maybe not for the village, but in your house. You've created something here. Not safety, that's too ambitious, but space. Room to ask questions, to say no, to grow before being pressed into someone else's mold. You've taught her about herbs, about sewing, about how to read people, not just words. She still fetches water and feeds chickens, but she also listens to gossip like it's strategy. She's learning to live smart, not just live. Sometimes, when you're alone, she asks about Maris. You tell her what you remember, what you choose to remember. That she saved babies, that she taught healing, that she warned you long before you understood, that knowing too much would always make people nervous. And that's what you're doing now, carefully, quietly, passing knowledge, not like a torch, but like a secret recipe, one girl at a time. The other children grow too, of course. Your son starts helping Anselm in the field. He gets strong, fast, and proud. You worry about him differently. Boys can have tempers, power. The world forgives them more. You talk to him even when you're tired. You say things like, help, don't just command, and your sisters aren't your servants. You watch his face, waiting for the day he decides to ignore you. But it hasn't come yet. Your youngest, tiny Brisa, is a different challenge. Curious, reckless. She once fed a toad her bread and declared him her husband. You didn't correct her. In this world, marrying a toad might be a step up. The days are long, the sun high. You tend your tiny garden. It's not much, some leeks, thyme, a few stubborn carrots, but it's yours. No one else planted it. No one else decides what grows. One afternoon, Lady Seldra rides through the village. She's older now, still regal, still distant. But she stops this time, dismounts, and hands a coin to one of the boys selling firewood. She sees you, recognizes you. You curtsy, out of habit, not deference. She says nothing, just nods, like Maris did once. And it's enough, because sometimes the people who survive aren't the loudest. They're the ones who see, who remember, who carry names and stories others would rather forget. That night, you take out the book Hildra has started to keep. She can read and write now more than most girls in 10 villages. The pages are uneven, the ink blotchy, but the words are hers. She's writing a list of plants, of uses, of stories. You add one. Yarrow, you say, stops bleeding. She nods, writes it down, and then adds beneath it, also keeps mothers alive. You don't cry, but your chest burns, and you realize, maybe this is what survival can look like. Not just making it through another season, but planting something that might outlive you. The air shifts again. Not the weather this time, it's something more subtle, a change in how people talk, how they move. It's as though the village itself has started to breathe differently, slower, watchful. There's word of unrest. Not here, not yet, but in the next shire over, a manor was ransacked. The Lord's granaries emptied by angry peasants. Someone said a monk was hanged for preaching too loudly. Someone else said he was just reading the wrong verse. No one knows for sure. But everyone starts locking their doors at night. Even though the doors are just wood and weak iron, you feel it creeping into your own life, this invisible fog of tension. Anselm speaks less, the priest preaches longer. People start talking about the natural order again, and you know that's code for keep your head down, especially if you're a woman, especially if you know things. Hildra notices too. She's asking sharper questions now, less about herbs, more about people. Why do men get to make the rules? She asks one day, squatting beside you while you hang wet sheets in the sun. You pause. Because they decided they should, and no one stopped them. Why didn't the women stop them? You glance around. No one's nearby. Still, you speak low. Because we were too busy surviving. She doesn't answer, just nods like she's storing the idea in her cheek for later chewing. And later comes. Hildra starts walking farther from the house, first to the edge of the village, then to the woods. You follow once, silently. She's meeting other girls from other families. You recognize some. Daughters of the weaver, the baker, the drunk who yells too loud when he drinks too little. They're not playing, they're talking. You don't stop her. But one night, you pull her aside. What are you doing? She meets your eyes without flinching. Learning. You nod. Be careful. She doesn't promise, but she's smart. And that's all you can really hope for. Meanwhile, the house keeps moving. The baby, well, she's not a baby anymore. Brisa is 4 and already has the stubborn confidence of a barmaid twice her age. She negotiates for extra stew like a tax collector and defends her bread crust like a knight. You love her fiercely, fearfully. Because you know the world won't always find her boldness charming. Your son is nearing manhood. His shoulders are broadening. His voice cracks like thin ice. He still listens to you, still helps. But you see the change coming, the pull of the outside world, the temptation to forget the softness you tried so hard to teach him. One day he comes home with a bruised knuckle and pride in his eyes. You say nothing, just hand him a cloth and make him scrub the chicken coop until dusk. He doesn't boast again. Anselm notices too. He talks to the boy about crops, about trade, about responsibility. For the first time, you feel a strange solidarity with him. You're both trying to pass something down, not land or titles, but sense. Maybe that's what parenthood really is, trying to inject common sense into tiny versions of yourself before the world makes them hard and dumb. The village gets stranger. A tax collector comes through and leaves with a broken wheel and a sour expression. Rumors fly that he was cursed. You know better, he probably just insulted the wrong grandmother. The priest begins warning against female temptations again. Hildra rolls her eyes during sermons. You squeeze her hand to remind her to look respectful. She squeezes back, twice, a signal you've both adopted. 1 for I see you, 2 for I've got you. You begin sleeping with a knife tucked beneath the mattress, just in case, and every night you write. Not much, just small notes, names, recipes. What to do if someone bleeds too much. What to boil if someone can't breathe. Where to hide herbs if someone comes knocking. You write it for Hildra, for Brisa, for any girl who might find herself alone and afraid. Because knowledge, once again, is your inheritance, and you will not let it die in your throat. Not this time. It starts with a visitor. Not a noble, not a taxman, just a woman. Not from your village, but not far. She walks with a limp and carries a satchel that looks too heavy for her frame. When she speaks, her accent is strange, clipped, unfamiliar. She asks for water. You offer bread too, and she takes it without thanks, but not rudely, just tired. Her name is Lineth. She's a widow, or so she says. You can tell there's more she's not telling, but that's her right. Everyone carries secrets like bruises, only visible when you press too hard. She stays the night in your barn. Anselm doesn't object. The children are fascinated, especially Hildra. They linger by the door, eavesdropping shamelessly as Lineth tells you about other villages, some where women are speaking up, organizing, teaching each other, secret schools, hidden scrolls. Hildra is practically vibrating. You are cautious. Lineth watches you with eyes that see more than you wish. You don't believe me. I do, you reply. I just know what happens to women who make themselves too visible. She smiles, half sad, half proud. Some of us are tired of being shadows. She leaves at dawn. No fuss, no goodbye. But she gives Hildra a scrap of paper, folded small, tucked tight into her palm. You don't read it, but you ask, what did she give you? Hildra just says, hope. And for once, you don't correct her. The summer deepens. The harvest is good. People start talking about God's mercy, about the land's forgiveness. But you know better. It's not mercy, it's chance. And you never gamble on chance alone. You store extra. Salt what can't be dried. Line the cellar with jars. Teach the younger ones how to spot spoilage, how to seal a barrel, how to watch for weevils. It's tedious, but necessary. Because survival isn't just muscle, it's memory. And memory is what keeps the next famine from being your last. Hildra spends more time with her little group of girls. They meet under the guise of berry picking or firewood gathering, but you know they're doing more than that. You can tell by the way they return. Faces flushed not from sun, but from thought, from planning. One night, Hildra shows you what she's written. It's not a diary, it's a manual for girls. Written in simple words with diagrams and humor and notes like, this plant smells awful but works. Use sparingly unless you hate the patient. You laugh, out loud. The sound startles the dog. Then you hug her and whisper, this is dangerous. She nods. I know. You don't stop her. The boy, your son, notices too. He's quiet about it, watches more, speaks less. One evening, he asks, why does Hildra know so much? You pause. Because I taught her. Will she marry? You shrug. Maybe not. That's her choice. He nods, accepts it, then says, can I learn too? And something in you shifts again. Because maybe the future isn't just saving girls. Maybe it's raising boys who don't need to be feared. You start teaching him too. Slowly, carefully. Not everything, but enough. And Anselm watches, says nothing, but he's listening. You know he is. You realize then the world doesn't change in speeches. It changes in kitchens, around fires, in whispers passed from mother to daughter, mother to son, in books hidden beneath beds, in women who never intended to lead but did, because no one else would, because no one else could. And maybe, just maybe, that's how revolutions start, not with swords, but with knowing. There's a celebration, nothing grand, just the annual harvest gathering in the village square. A chance for everyone to pretend, for one night, that life isn't hard, that winter isn't waiting just out of sight, and that the world isn't built on the backs of people like you. There's music, bread, ale, children run wild, chasing each other between carts. Someone brought a pig to roast. A luxury, even if it's mostly bone. For a moment, the scent of hardship lifts. You're there, of course. Not because you want to be, but because absence draws attention. And attention for women like you is rarely kind. You sit on a bench near the edge of the square, mending a torn sleeve while pretending to enjoy the noise. Hildra dances, not gracefully, but wildly. Hair loose, eyes bright, arms free. You almost call her back, almost remind her that people watch. But you stop, let them watch, let them remember joy. Anselm sits beside you, silent as always. He's not drunk, for once. Just tired. You pass him a crust of bread and he breaks it in half without looking. It's not love, this gesture, but it's not nothing. Later, the priest gives a speech. It starts hopeful, gratitude for the harvest, thanks to the Lord. But then, like always, it turns, a warning about pride, about women stepping beyond their place, about humility and obedience. You feel eyes shift in your direction. You don't turn, just stitch faster. Hildra stares at the priest like she's memorizing every wrinkle in his robe. She says nothing, but you know that look, that quiet fury. It's your look, too. Afterwards, a woman approaches you. You recognize her, barely. A girl you once shared a bed with at the convent, back when both of you were too hungry to dream. Now she's plump, respectable, married to a merchant. She wears jewelry. Her hands are soft. She smiles like a blade. "I hear your daughter reads," she says. She does. You reply, calm. A clever girl, but cleverness can be dangerous. You meet her eyes. So can ignorance. She blinks, smiles tighter, and walks away. You don't shake, don't cry. You faced colder things than gossip, but you walk Hildra home early, just in case. That night, you find her recopying her manual. Tidier, neater. This time with margins and index tabs made from bark paper. She sees your face. Was it too much? No, you say, but be ready. For what? For the day they decide it is. Because it's not if, it's when. And you can't stop that day from coming. But you can prepare her to meet it with fire in her hands instead of fear in her throat. The next morning, she hides her books in a false floorboard. You help her, not because you expect danger tomorrow, but because someday, someone will knock, and you want her to know where not to answer. Your son asks to go to the next village with Anselm. To learn trade, he says. You nod. You pack him dried apples and remind him to keep his hands clean. You don't cry when they leave. You save that for later when Brisa is chasing chickens and no one's watching. You think of the woman at the festival, her polished rings, her warning smile. You think of how many women bought safety by selling out the ones who couldn't. And you think, not me, not my daughter. You write another list that night. Not herbs, names, women you remember from your past. From your village, from stories whispered under breath, Maris, Anwin, Iseldra, Hildra. Your name too, because when they write the future, you want them to know who lit the path, even if all they have to remember you by is ink. The first frost comes early, not enough to ruin crops, those are already harvested and tucked away, but enough to sting your fingers and remind you time is short. Wood needs chopping, roofs need patching, everything must be made tight, secure, and dry. You move through it like a rhythm you never had to learn. Your body remembers even when your mind forgets. You tie bundles of kindling, you reline cloaks, you salt meat, hang garlic, scrub soot from the hearth. Your hands are never clean anymore, always stained with smoke or earth or time. Brisa has taken to following you like a shadow. She doesn't talk much, just watches, mimics. You give her small tasks, a clove to peel, a sock to sort. She does them seriously, like the fate of the world depends on well-organized wool. You know what she's learning isn't just chores, it's attention, it's instinct. It's the quiet language of women, how to anticipate needs, how to feel a room, how to make a home hold steady even when the walls shake. She's 4. She already knows more about resilience than most men twice her age. Hildra is restless again. The group of girls, now a group of young women, has grown bolder. They speak with urgency now, not curiosity. They talk about helping others, teaching younger girls, traveling to nearby villages, organizing. You're proud, terrified, but proud. One evening she sits beside you at the fire, notebook in her lap. We want to meet in the chapel. You raise an eyebrow. You mean the place watched over by the priest who thinks menstruation is a moral failing? She grins. Exactly. You shake your head. You've got your father's stubbornness. No, she replies, I've got yours. You want to warn her, to shout, to demand she wait, stay quiet, stay safe. But you don't, because you remember what silence cost Maris, what fear did to Anwin, what obedience robbed from you. Instead you say, hide everything well and know who your friends are. She nods. The next day, she's gone by sunrise. The meeting lasts hours. She comes back with twigs in her hair and a fire in her step. Her cheeks are flushed, her fingers ink-stained. She doesn't speak about what they planned. You don't ask. The village is shifting again. Not in obvious ways, no riots, no torches, just tension. The priest's sermons are increasingly pointed. Merchants whisper warnings. A man from the next town over was jailed for reading scripture aloud. Wrong scripture, they say, though what's wrong changes every month. Your son returns for a visit. Taller, broader, quiet, but more thoughtful. He sits with Brisa on his knee and asks her questions like she's already a person, not just a child. It gives you hope. He brings salt, a rare treat. You use it sparingly, like gold. At dinner, he asks Hildra about her reading. She doesn't lie. He listens, doesn't scold, just says you'll need to be smart then, smarter than them. He's not perfect, but he's trying. That night, you all sit by the fire. No one speaks. The quiet isn't empty, it's full. Full of thoughts not said aloud, full of love not declared but proven. You look at them, these children, these nearly adults, and think they might make it. Maybe not easily, maybe not cleanly, but they'll survive. And that's all you ever wanted. You go to bed and tuck the knife deeper beneath the mattress. Just in case, you still sleep lightly, but you sleep, and that, after everything, feels like victory. The day begins like any other. Chickens squawk, Brisa spills water, Hildra leaves early, notebook hidden in her cloak. You sweep the hearth and scold the firewood for being damp. But something in the air feels off, not loud, not sudden, just wrong. You notice it first at the well. 2 women whispering, too quiet, too quickly. You approach, they stop. One forces a smile, the other pretends not to see you. That's when you know, whatever it is, it's close, it's yours. You return home. Anselm is already in the field. The little ones are playing in the mud, pretending to be goats. You don't scold them, you just sit, wait. And then you hear it. Footsteps. 3 men, the priest, the village bailiff, and a younger man you don't recognize. Official looking, with a scroll in his belt and the smugness of someone who has never milked a cow in his life. They knock. You open the door. Your daughter, the priest says, is causing concern. He says it like he's saying disease. You raise an eyebrow. Which one? Hildra. You blink slowly. She's a girl. What concern could she cause? The young man steps forward. Unauthorized education, improper gatherings, distribution of heretical material. He says it like he's reading from a recipe. You want to laugh. You don't. She's a child, you reply. The bailiff shrugs. She's old enough to write. That's old enough to burn. And there it is, the oldest threat in the world for women who know too much. Fire. You straighten your back. She's not home. We'll wait, the priest says. You don't let them in. Instead, you hand Brisa a basket and whisper, find Hildra. Don't stop. Don't speak. Run. She nods wide-eyed and slips out the back. The men don't notice. For hours, they wait. You offer nothing but bread and blank stares. Anselm returns, confused, angry, but silent. He stands behind you, a quiet wall. For once, his silence is protection. By nightfall, they give up. They leave a warning. If she's not presented in 3 days, they'll return, with more men, with permission to search. You close the door gently, then bolt it. That night, you gather everything, the notebooks, the herbs, the lists. You dig up the floorboard. You pack sacks, salted food, water, a blanket, a knife. You don't cry. You don't have time. Hildra returns after midnight, muddy, breathless, but whole. She looks at you and you see it. Fear, yes, but also steel. Her hands are shaking, but her voice is steady. What now? You don't hesitate. You run. She opens her mouth to argue. You shake your head. You run. You hide. You survive. I can't leave you. You can. You must. Brisa hugs her. Your son gives her his scarf. Anselm presses a pouch of coins into her hand and says, "Go south. Stay near rivers. Don't trust priests." You didn't know he had that in him. Hildra hugs you last. You don't speak. You don't need to. She slips into the dark, gone before the sun. You wait by the window until dawn. Then you burn the notebooks. All but one, the one with her name on the cover. That one you bury. Because the truth isn't dead, it's just sleeping, waiting. And one day it will rise again, with fire, and this time, it'll be the right kind. The days after Hildra leaves stretch thin, like parchment worn by too many hands. Everything continues, because it must. Brisa still needs bathing, goats still need feeding, the hearth still asks for wood and doesn't care who's missing. But something is different now. The quiet in the house isn't peace, it's absence. You wake each morning half expecting to see her dark braid, her ink-stained fingers, her notebook open at the table. Instead, there's just a stool, empty. Still warm with memory. The priest doesn't return right away. Maybe he thinks fear is doing the work for him. Maybe he's right. You don't hear from Hildra. That's by design. You trained her well. Silence is survival. Still, you look for signs. A flower left on the gate, a strange footprint, a whisper carried by a merchant. Nothing comes. So you pretend. You return to routine with the precision of someone under surveillance. Your stitches are neater. Your bread always rises. You attend every sermon, nodding at the right moments, murmuring the right prayers. You become invisible again. It hurts, but invisibility is a kind of armor. Anselm watches you closely. He knows. He doesn't say it, but he's changed. Maybe it was the way Hildra left, without panic, with purpose. Maybe it was Brisa asking why men with God in their mouths always bring fire. Maybe he's finally tired of surviving on someone else's rules. He begins walking you home from the market, not because you need help, but because appearances matter now. He sharpens the axe more often, mends the gate, stands straighter in the square. You realize he's doing what you always have, building safety from suggestion. And you let him. Brisa, meanwhile, is watching everything. She asks more questions now, not like Hildra did, with hunger, but with a kind of quiet calculation. She notices when you hide things. She memorizes faces. You find her scribbling letters in the dirt. She's teaching herself to write. You say nothing. One morning, she shows you a leaf pressed and dried. "Hildra's," she says softly. "Where did you get it?" She shrugs. "Found it on the path." You know what that means. She's alive. She passed through, left a trace, a message in green. You press the leaf into your pocket and hold it all day like a talisman. The next week, the priest returns. This time, with 3 guards. They say they're searching all homes. Routine check. Nothing personal. You smile. You offer bread. You unlock every door before they ask. They find nothing. Because you buried everything 3 nights before. They leave unsatisfied, but not suspicious. Not yet. That night, you whisper to Brisa, "If they ever come again, you go." She nods. "Where?" "Where Hildra went." "How?" "Same path. Same signal." You nod, proud, terrified, but proud. Winter returns slower this time. You prepare as always, but now with urgency. You plant potatoes deeper. You cure meats longer. You map out hiding spots in the woods with Brisa, just in case. Anselm helps. Quietly. One evening, he sits beside you by the fire and says, "I should have known sooner." You don't ask what. You just say, "Now you do." And he nods. The 2 of you sit in silence, watching the flames dance. Behind you, Brisa draws something on the floor with charcoal. A symbol, one Hildra used. You don't stop her, you just smile, because they took 1 girl away and left behind 2. Winter tightens its grip again, but this time you meet it with preparation. Not just in food and fuel, but in silence, in secrets, in a house built not only of wood, but of intention. Every corner has a purpose, every drawer a hiding place, every routine a strategy. You've become the kind of woman your mother warned you about. And you're fine with that. Brisa thrives in the quiet. She reads now, haltingly, with a furrowed brow and a tongue peeking out the side of her mouth, but she reads. You pretend not to see when she copies letters by firelight, mouthing the words like a prayer. You let her have this secret because it is sacred. One evening she asks, "Was Hildra afraid when she left?" You think for a long moment before answering, "Yes, but she went anyway." Brisa nods like that makes sense. Then she adds, "So, courage is being afraid and going?" You smile. "Yes, exactly." She seems satisfied. That night, you find a new drawing under her blanket, a girl with a book in one hand and a torch in the other. You don't ask, because some truths don't need explaining. The village has quieted in its suspicion for now. The priest's sermons are shorter. The soldiers haven't returned. People smile again carefully, like they're borrowing happiness instead of owning it. But the ground still feels brittle, as if one wrong word might crack it open. You say little. You listen more. You hear of a girl in the next parish who was caught teaching others to write, vanished overnight. You know what that means. You keep your face still when the news is shared. Brisa watches your reaction. She sees the stiffness in your jaw. Later, she says, "That won't happen to me." You raise an eyebrow. "How do you know?" She shrugs. "Because I'm faster." You almost laugh. Almost. Instead, you pull her close and whisper, "And smarter, and quieter, and you never go without your boots." She grins. The frost deepens. Ice gathers at the corners of windows like silent observers. Meals are smaller now. You ration without complaint. Every bite is calculated, every log burned with the care of someone who's counted how many are left. Anselm works late into the cold evenings, mending everything that can break. Fences, buckets, spirits. He doesn't speak of Hildra anymore, but sometimes you catch him looking toward the road, waiting, wondering. You let him hope. You do too. The nights are long, too long. You keep busy with mending, drying herbs, organizing scraps. Brisa helps, chattering about nonsense, then suddenly asking, "Do you think Hildra misses us?" You pause. "Not in a sad way," you say. "In a brave way," Brisa nods. "Like when you're too busy changing the world to write home." You blink. "Who taught you that?" She grins. "You did. You don't remember, but you believe her." One morning, you find something at the gate. A small bundle, tied with twine, no note. Inside, a sprig of dried lavender, a broken comb, and a single page torn from a book. One of Hildra's. Her handwriting unmistakable. It's not a message, it's a confirmation. She's alive, still learning, still teaching, still running maybe, but not hiding. You tuck the page into your blouse, right over your heart. That night, you light a candle, not for prayer, not for God, for witness. You whisper names into the dark. Maris, Onwin, Iseldra, Hildra, Brisa. Your own. You say them like an incantation, like a list the world forgot, but you never will. Because one day, someone will ask what happened, and you'll say, "We were here." Spring, when it finally drags itself into your world, feels less like a joyful entrance and more like a tired traveler collapsing at your doorstep. It's damp, it's moody, but it's not winter, and that's reason enough to greet it with open arms and sore fingers. The snow doesn't melt in some glorious unveiling. It rots. It seeps into the ground with a stubbornness that stains everything in its path. Mud becomes a second skin. Boots vanish into it. Chickens sink in it. You consider offering it a name, since it's now clearly a resident of your home. Still, beneath the muck, life begins again. You can feel it. Green things push through the brown. Not flowers yet, those are too polite. These are weeds. Ragged, loud, unapologetically alive, and in a strange way, that feels right. After everything, softness would be offensive. What you need is something ugly, stubborn, and unkillable, like you. Brisa is the first to call it. It smells like growing. You sniff the air, it smells like wet hay, spoiled onions, and smoke. But beneath that, yes, there's something else, something waking up. She starts pointing at plants again. That one's nettle, that one's chickweed, that one's angry dandelion. You laugh, loudly. It startles the goat. You mean thistle. I like mine better. You let her have it. Your garden, the one you doubted would live through winter, begins to revive. Carrot greens peek up like tiny hands. The time survived. You whisper your gratitude to it as you trim the dead stalks. You've stopped asking gods for help, but you'll still thank a plant when it performs a miracle. Anselm builds a new compost bin. That's his version of an emotional outburst. Infrastructure. He doesn't talk about Hildra, not directly. But you see it in how he sharpens the tools, how he stares at the road, how he listens when Brisa reads aloud. Yes, Brisa reads now. Slowly, carefully, as if each word might explode in her mouth. She hides her notebook under the mattress, same as Hildra once did. But now it's not just herbal remedies and moon phases. She writes ideas. Big ones. Messy ones. One evening, you find this line scrawled across a page. The The world is wrong if girls have to run just to learn. You stare at it for a long time, and then you write under it, but they run fast. She sees your note. She doesn't speak, just hugs you tight around the waist like she's afraid if she lets go, the world might snap her back into silence. You whisper, "I've got you," because someone has to, and because no one ever whispered that to you. The village pretends everything is fine. Of course they do. The priest gives shorter sermons now. He knows better than to test the patience of people who still remember the hunger of last winter. He sticks to safe topics: sin, taxes, the danger of dancing too enthusiastically. You nod along in the pew, hands folded, face serene. You're his favorite kind of sinner, the invisible kind. Behind closed doors, things are less invisible. You sew a false lining into Brisa's cloak, a place to hide flint, a folded page, or, God forbid, a blade. You teach her how to walk quietly, how to listen behind doors, how to lie with her eyes instead of her mouth. You hate that she needs to know these things, but you teach them anyway, because one day she might need them more than she needs manners. The road outside the village changes too. You notice more travelers, women with short hair and wide eyes, boys who look like they've never held a plow. You hear rumors of villages where girls have disappeared, where abbeys were searched, where books were burned in town squares. But you also hear other things, of meetings held in abandoned barns, of coded songs sung at night, of messages written into loaves of bread, stitched into hems, carved into trees. Brisa finds one, a symbol scratched into the bark of the oldest tree near the well. Not words, just a spiral. You recognize it. Hildra's mark. Your hands shake. You press your fingers to it like a relic. "She was here," Brisa whispers. You nod. She's still moving. That night, you bake 2 loaves of bread, one for eating, one to leave on the edge of the woods, wrapped in cloth, with a piece of charcoal and a dried sprig of thyme tucked inside. A reply, a memory, a signal. The bread vanishes by morning. In its place, a single page. No message, just a drawing. A girl with fire in her hands, standing in front of a village. You show it to Brisa. She doesn't say a word. She doesn't have to. You take out your own notebook, the one you've kept hidden even from her, and you begin to write. Not just plants, not just history, but everything. Everything you remember. Everything you learned, everything you never want forgotten, because maybe the world isn't ready. But your daughters are, and that finally is enough. The summer that follows is the kind that writes itself into your bones. Long days, dry heat, skies so blue they look like they've been scrubbed clean. It's the kind of summer people will remember for years and misremember even more. Remember the summer after the hard frost, they'll say. The one where everything finally felt right? They'll forget the fear. You won't, but you'll let them have their version. Brisa wakes before you now. She's up with the birds, hair wild, hands stained with blackberry juice and charcoal. She's always scribbling. On paper when she can find it, on bark when she can't. She records things like the weather, the shape of cloud shadows, overheard bits of conversation, and spells. Well, not spells, not the way the priest would say, but mixtures, observations, warnings. There's one entry she's copied 5 times and hidden in 5 places. Never trust a quiet man who asks too many questions. You didn't teach her that. But you wish you had. Your house is a strange hybrid now. Half home, half school, half bunker. Yes, you know that's too many halves, but that's how it feels. 1 part survival, 1 part rebellion, 1 part legacy. Anselm understands now. He doesn't pretend otherwise. He doesn't try to stop the lessons or hide the symbols or hush Brisa's questions. He just keeps the roof patched, the goats fed, and the tools sharp. It's his way of saying, I'm with you. And that's enough. You're more cautious, but you're no longer afraid. There's a difference. Caution is the way you plan which herbs to dry first, where to bury extra salt, how to memorize 3 exits for every room. Caution is folding a message into the hem of a traveling merchant satchel. It's mapping out 3 nights of escape routes just in case someone knocks again. Fear was what stopped your mouth in the square when Maris was tied to a stake. You don't carry that anymore. Instead, you carry a bag of dried lavender, a knife, a plan. Hildra sends another message. This one comes tucked inside a jar of honey, delivered by a woman who doesn't give her name. You crack the wax seal and read the slip inside. 23 girls, 1 book, 1 vow. You don't cry, you smile. Because this is it. This is the fire lit in the forest, the one meant to burn long after your bones are dust. not in anger, in clarity. You show the message to Brisa. She reads it twice, then adds, "One more girl soon." You ruffle her hair. She scowls. You do it again. You begin preparing her kit, not for play, not for someday, for when. Because when doesn't mean far away anymore. It just means next. In it, you place a vial of feverfew, a dried apple, a stitched map of the woods, 3 charcoal pencils, and a note. Don't wait for permission. She watches you pack it. Watches you pack it. Will I really need to go? You don't answer right away. Then, I hope not, but I want you ready if you do. That night, you tell her the story of Maris. The real one. Not the burned woman, the healer, the protector. The whisperer of secrets who made poultices that pulled poison and who taught your shaking hands how to grind root into safety. You tell her about the look Maris gave you. The one that didn't ask for saving, just remembering. And Brisa says she didn't need saving. She needed successors. You blink and realize this child, this muddy, barefoot, but berry-stained child is wiser than you were at twice her age, and she's still just beginning. The next morning, the village wakes to something strange. Not a fire, not a raid, a change. Someone's carved symbols into the outer wall of the chapel, neatly, carefully, no vandalism, just marks, spirals, leaves, eyes. The priest loses his mind. He calls for searches, for punishment, for prayers and repentance. You and Brisa are already in the woods by then, pretending to gather mushrooms. You're not the only ones, there are others. A girl with a limp, another who walks with a stick, a boy with ink on his neck. They nod to you, you nod back. No one speaks, but everyone knows. The revolution has begun, and no one lit it. It grew, like weeds in cracks, like truth in whispers, like girls who never asked for power but took it anyway. It's hard to say exactly when the village changes, because change, real change, never happens in trumpets and banners. It happens the way moss overtakes a stone, quietly, persistently, all at once, and yet so slow you could swear nothing's moving. And then one day, you wake up and the world looks different. It starts with the bread. You notice more women trading loaves wrapped in cloth not stitched by village hands. The flour is different. The crust is darker. Inside one, tucked like a filling, you find a folded page, not a letter, but a lesson. On making ink from soot and nettle, signed only with a mark, 3 dots and a triangle. You burn it after memorizing it, not because you fear discovery, though of course you still do, because you don't need it on paper anymore. It's already in your blood. Brisa watches. You don't save them? No, you answer. I pass them on. She nods like that makes sense. Because it does. She's ready now. You can feel it. Not just in the way she reads fluently or how she can identify 32 herbs by leaf alone. It's the way she listens, the way she watches. You catch her once at the edge of the village, speaking with another girl, one you don't recognize. They exchange something small and quickly part. You don't ask, you don't need to. You've trained her. But more than that, she's become. Your son returns for a few days. He's taller now, wears his beard like a badge. He's been working with traders, carrying goods between towns, sometimes across borders. He's seen more than you have, and it shows in the careful way he speaks. He notices Brisa's notebook immediately. You teaching her? You nod. He studies her handwriting for a long moment. She's better than I ever was. She's better than I ever was, you reply. He laughs. Then, more quietly, be careful. Things are changing, faster than before. You raise an eyebrow. Good. It's about time. But you know what he means. In towns just a few days' walk away, there have been raids, women dragged from homes, books seized. One healer, an old friend of Anwin's, was accused of poisoning a lord's son with herbs. You know she was treating an infected wound. But that's how it always begins. Truth gets reshaped, twisted, used as kindling. So yes, things are changing. But not just on their side. The networks grow. More girls appear at the edge of your woods. Some pass through, some stay the night, some stay for weeks. You never ask for names. You ask what they know, what they carry, what they need. One night, a girl with a scar down her cheek tells you she came from a city where a woman was teaching literacy to servant boys in secret. They were caught. The teacher was stoned. And the boys? Brisa asks. The girl shrugs. Sent to confession, then back to their masters. Brisa doesn't cry, she just writes it down. That night, you hand her the last of Hildra's old pages, the ones you swore you wouldn't give away. The ones you saved for the day, Brisa wouldn't just read them but understand them. She reads them in silence, candlelight casting long shadows on her face. Then she looks up and says, It's time, isn't it? You don't pretend not to know. Yes, you say, because she's no longer just your daughter. She's a courier now, a keeper, a sower of seeds. The next morning, she leaves before dawn. Her pack is small, her steps are sure. She doesn't look back, you don't follow. You simply sit in the doorway and drink the last of the tea. You watch the road until it curves out of sight, and you whisper into the quiet, go fast, go wise, go loud if you must. You're alone again. But it's not the same. This isn't absence, it's presence scattered across the world. Girls who carry knowledge, girls who whisper truth, girls who refuse to forget. You light the hearth again. Not for warmth, but for the next one who comes through. Because they will, they always do. The house is quieter now, not because it's empty, but because what remains no longer needs to be loud. You move through it like a priestess in a temple, not worshiping, but tending, to memory, to presence, to the sacred echo of all the women who passed through both blood and bond. Brisa is gone, like Hildra before her, and yet, both are everywhere. You find traces, the worn edge of a page tucked beneath the floorboard, a sprig of dried thyme carefully looped into the thread of a curtain, a series of dots carved into the underside of the table where Brisa used to eat, none of it loud, all of it unmistakable. Outside, the village stirs. Life goes on in its usual rhythm, planting, trading, whispering about who's too bold and who's not bold enough. But there's a tension beneath it now. Not fear, readiness. It started small. A woman you'd never spoken to before stops you at the well. My daughter asks questions, she says, eyes wary. You nod. Let her. Another leaves eggs on your doorstep. No note, just a small charm tucked between them, a spiral burned into wood. You know what it means. They're not just learning now, they're sharing. One by one, girls begin to rise. In small ways first, a story corrected here, a lesson whispered there. Then larger, a gathering behind the mill, a circle in the woods, a prayer that sounds suspiciously like a plan. You're not leading them, you never did. But they look at you like a lighthouse anyway. One night there's a knock, not fearsome, not panicked, just firm. You open the door to a girl you don't know, barely 13, eyes too old for her face, hands wrapped in linen. I heard, she says, that you remember things. You don't ask who told her. You let her in. You make tea. You ask her name. She doesn't give it. You tell her yours. She already knows it. She doesn't come to learn. Not yet. She comes to listen, to feel the weight of the room, the quiet of knowing, the safety of not having to ask permission. Before she leaves, she touches the page on your wall, Hildra's last message. You knew her? You nod. She's mine. The girl nods once, solemnly, then disappears into the dark. You keep the candle lit a little longer than usual that night, not for you, for whoever's next, because this is what the revolution looks like when it works. Not torches and thrones overturned, but homes left open just wide enough for someone else to walk through. Books buried where only the brave will dig. Children taught how to read in silence, how to speak in code, how to move like water, soft, patient, and inevitable. Years pass, your hands wrinkle, your back stoops, but your mind, your memory stays sharp. You remember them all. Maris, Anwin, Yseldra, Hildra, Brisa, and now more. Names you couldn't have imagined when this all began. Some you met, most you didn't, but they're yours too, because they walked the path you carved. And one day, far from now, when the world finally opens its eyes and realizes who built it, someone will say your name. Not in fear, not in shame, but in thanks. You close your eyes and rest, because the work is still being done. And you did your part. End of script. The fire's gone quiet now, just soft embers humming beneath the ash. Outside, the wind brushes gently against the windows, not howling, not begging, just breathing. The world has slowed, and so should you. You've traveled far tonight, through frost-bitten winters and sunlit paths, through whispered secrets and stories stitched between generations. And now, with your eyes heavy and your thoughts warm, it's time to let go of the journey and simply rest. You are safe here. You are wrapped in something older than fear and stronger than silence. A thread spun from the voices of those who came before, woven into a blanket of knowing. You carry them now, not in burden, but in quiet strength. Let their names float gently in your mind, soft as falling petals, steady as a river. Each one a light, each one a lullaby. The road is no longer calling. The revolution doesn't need you tonight, because even fire rests, even memory sleeps. So breathe in and out. Sink deeper into your blankets. Let your thoughts scatter like seeds in spring, and trust that the story will keep unfolding while you dream. The work continues, but for now, just sleep. End of script. Sleep well.